Namaskar. We are starting a series of videos on integral health and integral counselling. We have with us here a faculty member of Sri Aurobindo Center for Advanced Research, Dr.Falguni Jani. Welcome, Dr. Falguni Jani.
Thank you.
She has been an integral counsellor for more than 15 years and has been reading Sri Aurobindo's and Mother's works and applying them in counselling, which has benefited a lot of people. So today she will be telling us about integral health and causes of illness. So Dr. Jani, would you like to tell us about what integral health is and why is it called integral health?
Integral health is the concept of maintaining oneself healthy, happy, and looking at one's own inner growth. It is not only about handling your illness or your problems on a superficial level, but understanding who you are, what you are. And the whole concept is based on Sri Aurobindo's integral yoga psychology. And the main points of this integral yoga psychology is based on the purpose of life, why we are born, what is the aim of life, and in fulfilling that deeper aim, there are certain difficulties that we face within ourselves, and these difficulties sometimes take a bigger shape in our life and causes disturbances of various kinds. And as you know that we are as human beings very complex. All of us have observed that we have a body which we try to understand, we have a mind, we have the life force which in Sri Aurobindo's terminology we call it the vital, and we all know that we have in the innermost part of ourselves our soul. Also in Sri Aurobindo's terminology we call it the psychic being, the spark of the soul. And he says that we are born so that we may grow from within, and with each birth this spark grows in us. And that brings us to the question, how many of us understand the purpose of life? Do we understand it as the growth of our soul? Most of us think of life as growing up, educating ourselves, getting a job, having children, and then old age, some illnesses, disease, which results in death. But integral health wakes us up that no, these things, getting old, getting sick, is not inevitable. They are all in our control. And that makes us realize, how can we control? How can we become conscious? And here I would like to read one quotation from the mother. She says, an illness of the body is always the outer expression and translation of a disorder, a disharmony in the inner being. Unless this inner disorder is healed, the outer cure cannot be total and permanent. Now this quotation itself gives rise to so many questions. What is the outer expression of a disorder? What is the disharmony that we are feeling? And how this disharmony can be healed? And this comes as a very important question because many of us have seen chronic illnesses like asthma, backache, knee pain, constant headache, fatigue. They just don't seem to go by mere medicines or some yoga techniques. And in this context, it becomes so relevant that the disharmony must be at a deeper level. There has to be an inner cause of the disharmony. Otherwise, why should an illness continue to make one suffer for decades in spite of the medicines? So now is the time that we look for deeper causes. And here mother says that find out where the disharmony is in your whole being. So maybe you would ask, what do we mean by our whole being? And there we have to understand that our different parts have a role to play in our lives. And we have often seen that we are at a dilemma, whom to listen to. Our body has different demands, our vital, our life force wants to do something else, our thought system has a different agenda, and in all this confusion and noise, we do not know what our soul wants. And so, the disharmony is caused by the battle within. It's interesting to know what mother says regarding this. She says that I do not know if you are aware of the difference between the two. The two, here she means two types of disorder or disharmony. One, she says, is functional, the other is organic. So I continue to read from the mother. She says, but you have organs and then you have all the parts of your body, nerves, muscles, bones and all the rest. Now, if an organ by itself is in disequilibrium, it is an organic disequilibrium. And you are told that organ is ill, or perhaps it is badly formed, or it is not normal, or an accident has occurred to it. But it is the organ that is ill. Yet, the organ may be in a very good condition. All your organs may be in a very good condition, but there is still an illness as they do not function properly. There is a lack of balance in the functioning. Then you have an illness due to functional imbalance, not organic imbalance.
So Dr. Jani, we have known that we have different parts of the being and there are disharmonies in different parts of the being. But do you think as an individual, if we want to work on ourselves, can we identify the location and the nature of disharmony in each of these?
Sure. I mean, we have this quotation from the mother, her guidance, that it is easy if we take notice of ourselves, if we are conscious of ourselves, we can locate it where the disharmony came from. And we have seen that different emotions, different thoughts gives rise to a lot of disturbance. For example, fear. If you have a fear of something, and many a times the fear comes from outside influences. For example, if there is an epidemic in the city, or if your neighbor has got an illness, epidemic in a city, or your neighbor has got an illness, you may start thinking, oh my God, I can also catch it. Now this doubt later on becomes an anxiety, and this anxiety comes into the body's cells itself. What if I get sick? I have got so much work to do. What will happen? And these days we are having epidemics like dengue and other. So a constant fear is lurking even in our subconscious mind, which we are not aware. Now that can cause somewhere a disturbance. Perhaps you do not feel peaceful, perhaps you get irritated, perhaps you do not take proper rest. Now, this can initially come as a symptom of tiredness or feverishness. Here mother says, be aware, be conscious. As soon as you become a little tired or you feel that feverishness, take a pause, sit quietly and reflect where this has come from. And once you find that out, you must try to banish it by a strong willpower. I do not want to be ill. And believe me, that has made a difference in many cases. You do not fall into that trap of worrying, being anxious, being fearful, and the small symptoms, they go away. Sometimes, as she says, that your heart starts palpitating, and then there is a sort of trembling in the whole body. In those times too, you have to sit quietly and talk to that organ. This may sound a little funny, but then it has helped people. Why should you tremble so much? Why should you palpitate so much? And then you try to breathe in, be quiet, and peace will come with harmony. Somewhere the harmony is disturbed. So the different parts, they demand different things, and the effect on the body is experienced. But to experience the initial signs, you have to have a very conscious awareness of all the movements every day.
Yeah, but we see a lot of our physical illnesses are reflected because we are either in tension or we are all the time doubting, like what you just now said, that if we have the fear that there is an epidemic in the city. But even apart from that, we see somebody suffering, and often we have heard that people who are curing or taking care of ill people, they themselves succumb to the same illness at times. So is it that because we are constantly in touch, or is it that we are harboring that idea in us that we will be ill one day, or have we taken that kind of a pain from somebody? Why does that happen? What kind of a disharmony is that? Because we are seeing somebody suffer. And we often feel, sometimes I have heard people say that, my husband's hand was aching so much that even mine is aching, or my mother's, this was happening and it is happening to me as well. It may be a momentary, temporary thing, but we do identify with the other person. And that also sometimes becomes the cause of our...
True. All these things, in fact, require a great training. It cannot happen as soon as you realize that this is a problem. You have to train yourself, first of all, to have a very strong mind. It is the weaker mind that succumbs to influences from outside. Besides, with a family member or the loved person, there is a sort of empathetic relationship. And that relationship, that emotional ties that you have, also makes you vulnerable. Now that vulnerability is something that one has to observe within oneself. This vulnerability also is observed on different parts of the body. Everyone is not vulnerable in one part. Whenever there is stress, whenever there is this kind of empathetic relationship wherein you get involved with the loved person's illness, you may have noticed that either you feel somewhere a pain in the chest, or you get a headache, or with lots of worrying, many people get shoulder pain. So the pain translates itself into the most vulnerable part of your body. People who are disturbed, I have noticed, who remain little sad for a longer period of time, they get cough and cold very easily. Infections are there, bacteria, viruses are always there in the atmosphere. but for you to catch it, there are certain conditions that are being made ready by your own unconsciousness. Bacteria, viruses are always there, but not everyone catches it. So, not only it is part of your mind that has to become stronger, but even your lifestyle should reflect certain cares to be taken regarding exercises, physical exercises, pranayama, proper rest, proper food. And one thing that we are never aware of, the changing of seasons, which is happening a lot these days. And changing of seasons take a toll on your stamina. And accordingly, there is a science which says that your food should balance the season as well as your physical output. But most of the time, our food and our work habits are more as part of what we are always doing and not based on what the conditions are. So, you have to become conscious and you have to learn to protect yourself from illness by not getting influenced. So, we have to remember that if we want to serve our loved ones, if we want to take care of them, the first condition is to take care of our own selves. We have to sit with ourselves. So, I think today in conclusion, I would give some few tips, and in our next session, we will take up another cause of ill health. Today our theme was disharmony and disorder, and that disharmony comes from our not being conscious of ourselves, not being conscious of the different parts of ourselves, our body, our mind, our life force. Although this theme will come always in all the topics that we will be taking, because Sri Aurobindo and the mother always lays emphasis on the different planes and parts of the being with which we are constantly engaged, and with the understanding of which will lead to our growth. And growth can happen with health. So, for good health, to establish harmony, to establish order, we need to be conscious of ourselves, conscious of what we are doing, conscious of what we are thinking, conscious of what we are feeling. And to take care of ourselves is the best way to grow forward in life and also to help others in our life. Thank you.
Thank you so much.